Καλησπέρα αγαπητοί μου εν Χριστώ αδελφοί, καλώς ορίσατε για ακόμα μία Πέμπτη στις Πνευματικές Ανάσες. Μαζί μας απόψε, όπως είπαμε στην αρχή του προγραμματός μας, έχουμε τον Διευθυντή του Γραφείου του FBI εδώ στη Νέα Υόρκη, τον κύριο Γεώργιο Βενιζέλο. Είναι μεγάλη μας χαρά και μεγάλη μας τιμή που μας παραχωρεί αυτή τη συνέντευξη, προπαντός επειδή ο ίδιος πριν μερικές μέρες ήταν και ο επίσημος καλεσμένος τελετάρχης της ελληνικής παρέλασης, την χάνει και να είναι και ελληνικής καταγωγής και γι' αυτό αγαπητοί μου φίλοι και ακροατές είμαστε ιδιαίτερα υπερήφανοι για τον δικό μας, τον Γεώργιο Βενιζέλο, έναν αξιόλογο άνθρωπο με πολυετή πείρα και προσφορά στην Αμερική, στη Νέα Υόρκη, όπως θα ακούσουμε σε λίγο. My beloved brothers and sisters in Christ and dear and respected listeners, welcome to another edition of Spiritual Breaths on Elas FM. Today we have the most distinct pleasure but honor also to be with Assistant Director in Charge George Venizelos, the head of the FBI's New York field office, and it is with great pride and joy that we are with him today, enjoying his hospitality and that of the FBI, to speak a little bit specifically about his tenure in the Federal Bureau of Investigation, but also the Greek Independence Day parade that just took place a couple of days ago, and Mr. Venizelos, of course, as you all know, was the Grand Marshal of this year's parade. Mr. Venizelos, thank you so much for extending to us your hospitality, and welcome back to New York, I should say.
All right. It's my pleasure. Thank you.
And let me begin by asking you to describe for our listeners your upbringing. Where did you grow up? And describe also your education for us. Where did you go to school? And what is your alma mater?
Sure. I grew up in a very traditional Greek family. My father immigrated from Greece in the 1940s when he was in his 20s. He was a port captain, merchant marine port captain with then the company called Hellenic Lines out of Brooklyn. And their headquarters was downtown New York on 39 Broadway. My mother was born and raised in Lowell, Massachusetts. My grandparents of my mother's side came into this country in the early 1900s, 1910 or so, in Lowell, one of the early Greek settlements, a very traditional Greek family. And when they met and they lived up there, they lived in Lowell for a few years, and my father took his job back down here in Brooklyn. So when I moved back from Massachusetts, I moved here when I was like 3 or 4 years old.
What part of Greece are they from?
My father was born and raised. He grew up in Kalamata, a village outside of Kalamata. My mother's family was from Messina, which is not too far from Kalamata. And my grandfather was actually a district attorney in Kalamata, so his roots, whether they came from Crete or wherever, they could have come from anywhere.
Very nice.
So we relocated back here, and we actually lived in Bay Ridge for 2 years. I went to kindergarten in Bay Ridge.
Holy Cross or public school?
The public school.
Public school. Very nice.
And then we moved to Edgewater, New Jersey, which is where I grew up, right on the Hudson River. Somebody my father worked with lived in Fort Lee, New Jersey, taught my father until we moved to Edgewater, which is where I grew up, which I pretty much grew up and went to grammar school and high school in the Edgewater, New Jersey area. We were members of the Tenafly Church in New Jersey.
St. John's.
St. John's.
Very nice.
Cathedral. But my parents worked. They both worked very hard their whole life. My father worked on the Brooklyn Piers, very long hours, and leave 5 o'clock in the morning and get back late at night, 6 days a week. I would spend time with him in the piers, so I kind of grew up in the Brooklyn Piers too.
Very nice.
And I worked downtown, and my mother worked for actually a Greek coffee company, Coffee Associates. She was a bookkeeper for them for many years. Unfortunately for me, they both passed away in '94. And I went to college at Fordham University, very proud graduate of Fordham University. In fact, my wife also is a graduate of Fordham University. And my oldest son is a recent graduate. He graduated in 2012 from Fordham University, and my daughter's a sophomore at Fordham University. And I have another son who's he's a junior at Boston College. So I had one son escape the Fordham tradition.
Very nice, very nice.
And I have 4 children right now, too.
Oh, God bless. I have 3, so I can only sympathize with you for having 4, of course. You already told us that your grandfather was a district attorney.
Yes.
So law enforcement, justice, social justice is obviously runs in your family. But let me ask you, Director, why did you join the FBI, and what is so special about this agency? Someone with your educational background, Fordham University, could have chosen pretty much any other organization, both on the city level, NYPD, or something along those lines. But why the FBI? Why did you join the FBI?
Well, as a child, I lived next door to a retired FBI agent who had some influence on me. But I was always wanted, for some reason, as a kid, to be an FBI agent. Now, my parents had other ideas. You know, I was a decent student, so they wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer.
Like all Greek parents.
So I was actually, when I went to Fordham University, I was pre-med. And then what we had, on a career day, we had an FBI agent speak at Fordham University. And, convinced me that FBI is what I want. And then I switched to accounting because accounting is one of the entry programs into the FBI, accounting, law, and diversified program.
Mm-hmm.
But it took me 8 years to get an FBI. It's a very difficult job to get. And I was a DEA agent for 4 years and accountant for 4 years.
Okay.
But I've never lost that passion for federal, because to me the FBI, what sets the FBI apart in my eyes, is the FBI works multiple criminal violations. It's not just working like DEA just works drugs.
Sure.
The FBI works white-collar crime, organized crime, terrorism. It works many levels of crimes. And it's a very, very professional organization that has tremendous people working for it.
And we have seen that firsthand, because we had the distinct pleasure of being admitted to your FBI Citizens Academy, which is a wonderful program. We'll speak a little about that in a little bit. Speak to us about a little bit about your career and where you have worked within the Bureau. Just so we can get an idea, we've already established that it's a very difficult organization to gain entry to employment-wise. But tell us a little bit about where you worked within the Bureau, because I believe you've also been assigned to Washington, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, my 22 years in the FBI has been a true adventure. Out of training school, you don't know where they're going to send you. My first office assignment was Boston, Massachusetts. So I had a chance to go to Boston, Massachusetts, where I primarily worked white-collar crime, public corruption, and I actually did some undercover type work in the organized crime drug arena. Mm-hmm. So I had a chance to work all different criminal violations when I was in Boston. Then from Boston, I was transferred to Washington. My first time in Washington, I was a supervisor in the organized crime section in Washington in the 90s, late 90s. And from there, I spent 2 years in that job, and then from there, I was transferred to my first supervisory role in the field. I was in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I was a supervisor of 20 people in a small office in Harrisburg. Mm-hmm. And that's where I was during 9/11. And then my first trip to New York was after Harrisburg. I came to New York 10 months after 9/11 as a assistant special agent in charge in the drug program in New York. And then eventually switched to assistant special agent in charge of the terrorism program in New York. So I was in that role for 3 years. And after 3 years, back to Washington for me. I went back to Washington as an inspector, which is a senior executive who inspects other offices, making sure we're doing the work the right way.
Okay.
And I did that for 14 months. And come back to New York again, the second time. I was one of New York has 6 special agent charges. It's such a big office. I was one of them. I was one of the 6 special agent charges. And I worked administrative matters. I worked a little terrorism, and I also had the opportunity to be an acting assistant director during my end of my time there. I did that for 4 years. Then from there, I got transferred to be in charge of the special agent in charge of the Philadelphia division, which I enjoyed immensely.
Sure.
And then
Great city.
Great city, great work. Eighth largest FBI office out of the 56 offices, is the eighth largest. And then I had the honor and pleasure to come back here in December as the assistant director in charge of the largest office in the FBI.
Right, I was going to ask you, how does the New York office compare to the rest of the offices? And it is, in fact, the largest office that the FBI has. And what kind of crimes do you investigate here in the New York field office? I know we've mentioned some white-collar crime, and could you just elaborate a little bit on what kind of crimes we investigate in the FBI here?
Yeah, the New York office is, because it's the largest office in the largest city, in the country, we work everything. You know, obviously, terrorism is our number one concern in the city, and it always will be for the near future, and probably for a long time. We feel that New York City is the primary terrorism target, so we have to ensure that we have a very strong terrorism program in New York City, as we do. We have the best joint terrorism task force in the country. But also, New York is also the home of Wall Street, so we have a lot of the white-collar crime cases, or the stock fraud cases, bank fraud cases, anything money cases are huge in New York because of let's face it, New York is a financial capital of the world, and what comes along with that is financial crimes. And then we do, New York is it's a city. It's a city of 8 million people. We have different gangs and different organized crime. It's the traditional home of the organized crime families, which
Sure.
are not just Italians anymore. You have Albanian organized crime. You have Asian organized crime. It's a melting pot, so you have a lot of different organized crime. Also, we have the United Nations, so we have a lot of the a big program in the counterintelligence, we call the spy type work. So we do a lot of that. New York has everything. New York has everything, and everything that we have in New York is at a major level compared to the rest of the country.
Mm-hmm.
We have the best. We have the biggest cases in the FBI and the most important cases, because as New York goes, the rest of the country goes, and then also the world can go.
Sure.
So,
and we most definitely owe you a debt of gratitude. I mean, a lot of times you're in the background.
Right.
We don't get to see your agents. They're not as visible, I would say, as, NYPD or one of those organizations. But you are definitely doing some of the most important work. And I wanted to ask you, Director, how has 9/11 and the war on terrorism that you made mention of moments ago changed the New York office, but the FBI in general? How have you changed resources? What changes have been made?
The FBI has changed a lot since 9/11. Our responsibility for terrorism has increased to a point where we're not satisfied investigating terrorism cases. We need to prevent the next terrorist attack. We can't allow another terrorist attack. So in order to do that, we built up our intelligence capability. We hired a lot of analysts we tripled our analyst cadre in order to try to predict and try to evaluate what the threats are to this city or this country or the world. And so it's important that we get out ahead and prevent the next attack. I mean, we're not satisfied investigating. We can investigate better than anybody after something happens, but our goal now is to prevent anything from happening. We can't allow another terrorist attack in this city or anywhere.
Sure. And I think all the agencies in New York, but all around the country, are definitely on the same page with you on that. Let's speak a little bit about how does the FBI interact with the public on a daily basis. For example, I'd like if you could describe for us some of the outreach programs of the FBI, such as the Citizens Academy that we made mention of in our opening statements. What is the purpose of these programs? What do you hope to accomplish? Because many times people see the law enforcement side of any agency, and they seldom get an inside look of these really wonderful programs like the Citizens Academy and so on and so forth. So what kind of programs do you have to interact with the public on a daily basis, and what are the goals of these programs?
Well, we have a number of programs, and we feel the more we can educate the public of what the FBI is really all about, and the more the public will trust the FBI and come to the FBI and realize that we're people just like them. We grew up in these areas, and we're very dedicated in our mission of protecting this country. And we have Citizen Academy is a perfect example of a program where we bring leaders from the communities in to get a first-hand view of what the FBI is all about and what we do every day, and get to know some FBI agents and FBI employees to humanize us, because sometimes TV will portray a stereotype of the FBI that's not true.
Sure.
It's not true. So it's important that we educate people, and to be ambassadors for us, to go out there and say, hey, that's not true. The FBI is actually made up of tremendously dedicated individuals that they dedicate their lives to keeping this country safe. And we have outreach programs with colleges. We have outreach programs with corporations, because today's day and age, we need to, as a country, everybody needs to work together. You know, if we're going to prevent crime in general, get ahead of crime rather than investigate big crimes, I'd rather investigate small crimes, because that means we're getting to the crimes before they become big. We rely on corporations and schools and citizens to come forward to help us stop crime before it gets too big, and that's the purpose. I think there's a lot of stereotypes that aren't true of the FBI out there. You know, we're a group of extremely dedicated people we've devoted our life to public service.
And not only that, but extremely educated, also very, very capable people. Like we said in the beginning, the admissions process to the Federal Bureau of Investigation is very, very arduous. I mean, you don't just finish an academy. I mean, just finishing the academy itself must be very difficult, and then to be placed. So I think the public has that sense of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, but yet, as you say, Director, there are a lot of stereotypes, and thank God for these programs that humanize, as you said, the face of the FBI. And having said that, it is a very intricate and sometimes complicated hierarchy in the FBI. Now, you happen to be at the top of that hierarchy as the Assistant Director in charge of the New York Field Office, which is a very prominent and position within the Bureau. I'd like if you could describe a typical day for you as the Assistant Director in charge.
Sure. The difficulty, I'm responsible for close to 2,100 people in this office. So my day will start off of how can I make the 2,100 people in this office jobs easier to do. So a number of ways I could do that. One, I do a lot of outreach myself to corporate security heads and citizens in general, and I'm the face of the FBI for this office, so it's important I get out there and build as many bridges as I can with the community, but whether it's the business community or the general community leaders, to make the FBI's jobs easier. So that's part of my job, is being out there, raising the profile of the FBI. The other thing is, we have to run, it's like running a business. I'm running a business with 2,100 employees.
Fairly large business at that,
right.
Sure.
And we have employees, throughout the territory, and we have a number of locations we have to manage and make sure that the employees have what they need to get the job done, and that's a big part. And right now, a big part of my job is outside the building. Getting out, meeting people, carrying the FBI flag, telling people what we're doing, telling people the good things we're doing, telling people about the great people working in this office and dedication, trying to open as many doors as I can for the people in this office to work and get the job done. So, and and then I have a staff. I have to, identify leaders, build leaders, make people around me better. I have 6 special agent charges. It's almost like 6 offices in one, so I have to make sure that they have what they need. I have to ensure that we're working the priority cases. We're working everything we can to prevent terrorism, everything we can to prevent Wall Street crime. We have the right resources, working the right crimes. And that comes with a lot of help from a lot of people.
Sure, and it's probably true that there is no 8-hour day in your line of work. Is there a time where you could remember the last time you worked just 8 hours in the office?
It's never happened for me.
It's never happened, of course. And maybe that's one of the reasons why you're sitting in this beautiful office now, right? Let's change our focus a little bit now. What was the significance for you, Director, to be chosen as the Grand Marshal of this year's Greek Independence Day Parade?
I'll tell you, when I first accepted the honor, the true honor, I initially underestimated the importance, but as we got closer to the date, I really started to realize what a tremendous honor this was. As Greeks, we're all proud people.
Sure.
And having grown up Greek, I remember, my mother and father would be proud of successful Greeks like they were their own children, but they didn't even know them. But because they were Greek, there was a lot of pride there. And for me, growing up, looking up and having a lot of pride for all the different Greeks that have made it in this country, to be somebody who's looking up to, proud of what I've done in my life is very humbling, and it's a true honor, because I'm an extremely proud Greek. My wife's Greek, my kids are 100% Greek, so being Greek to me is very important, and that's one thing people get to know me. First thing they always find out about me, they know I'm Greek. So, and I've become my parents now, because I educate them of how important how much influence Greek culture has had on this country.
Have you, we've already mentioned that you served in Washington and Boston area. Have you been involved in any other Greek Independence Day parade in an official capacity, or just have gone to participate in them as a spectator?
Never been officially involved in any Greek parade before. My family has, they march with the church.
Right.
We're members of the St. Andrew Church in Randolph, New Jersey.
Oh, very nice.
And my wife, and usually my little one, he would dress up in his traditional outfit and march with the church every year. So I've been involved in the New York parade as a spectator.
As a spectator,
right.
Sure.
And in Boston, we were, my hours were crazier, and my kids were very young. And when I first got to Boston, so we didn't participate in that parade at all.
Sure. Right. And what were your impressions of this year's parade, which is the first for you, but also the other events that surround the parade, such as the dinner at the Hilton Hotel, at which you were also honored? What was your general impression? What was the vibe that you got from the people and the love of the people for you as the Grand Marshal, but your general impressions of New York's parade?
It was incredible. The feeling was incredible. It was one of the most incredible feelings I've ever felt. The warmth and the pride that people had was second to none. Probably one of the biggest thrills of my life and proudest moments of my life for me and my family. And the dinner it started with the dinner at the Hilton. There was so much pride up in that room, and it was.
Was it a well-attended dinner? How many people were in attendance, do you think?
I think they had about 380 people. They had 100 more people they expected.
Oh, wow.
So it was very touching. It was very well done. It was very humbling for me, with the Archbishop there and everything. It was incredible. It was an incredible experience that I will never forget the rest of my life.
Was this the first time you met the Archbishop here, or have you met before during your first tenure in New York?
I had met him a few times before, but not as in depth or as I did this weekend. So I mean,
wonderful man and a great intellectual, a very humble person, and everyone that meets him is just in awe of his depth of knowledge. I mean, even us as clergymen, we sit around and you could actually talk with His Eminence from everything from high theological debate. And at one point, I remember during my tenure at St. Dimitrios Cathedral in Astoria, he was analyzing for us jazz notes and then the soccer ball, where it came from, how is it made, and it's just a wide gamut of knowledge. He's a wealth of knowledge. Let me ask you, Director, how can the Greek community, but not only the New York City residents at large, help the FBI? Are there any numbers to call for suspicious activities? Or, of course, the obvious choice would be 911 if it's something of an imminent nature. But let's say one of those white-collar crimes. What are the numbers that someone can call to help you in your day-to-day investigations?
well, the main number in the FBI is 212-384-1000. That will prompt you to, if it's a terrorist attack, you could get into the terrorist number.
And just to translate for our Greek-speaking audience, το τηλέφωνο του γραφείου της Νέας Υόρκης για το FBI είναι 212-384-1000.
And it's important that, I can't underestimate how important the public is to solving any crimes or preventing any crimes, more importantly. I mean, if you see anything that's unusual or bothers you, you need to call, whether you call the FBI or the NYPD. You need to call somebody, because that one phone call could save lives, thousands of lives. You never know. You never know. And I think nobody knows the community like the people who live in the community. And anything, if there's going to be any kind of disruption, it's usually going to come from somebody in the community that's seeing something that's unusual. So it's extremely important that we be vigilant and observant of our surroundings, because we do live in a complicated world now, and what we don't ever want is another 9/11 in this great city of ours and this great country. So it's important that we remain vigilant and know our surroundings.
Well, I mean, I'd like to thank you once again, Director Venizelos. It's with extreme pride that we are with you today. We have followed your career from the first time you were assigned to the New York field office, but now we are extremely proud, as you said, to have a fellow Greek, fellow Hellene, to be in the position of the Assistant Director in charge of the New York office. We're very proud to see you at the Hilton, very proud to see you at the parade. Of course, we'd like for you to think from now, even though next year you won't be the Grand Marshal, but we'd like for you to think about marching next year with the Greek law enforcement agents and officers, the St. Paul Society, who does a lot of great work. Thank you so much for having us again. Your hospitality is truly unparalleled, and I invite anyone that can find out a little bit more about your Citizens Academy to partake in that program, those that can commit to the weeks and weeks of instruction. A final thought for our Greek listeners listening not only in the tri-state area, but through the streaming feed on the internet worldwide. A final thought from the Assistant Director in Charge, George Venizelos, of the New York FBI Field Office.
I just want to thank the Greek community for everything they've done for me over the years. You know, having to move around, you know, 6 times, four states.
Welcome to the priesthood.
Yeah. And every community we went to, we've actually were members of 4 different Greek communities around 4 different states, whether it's Andover, Massachusetts, Annapolis, Maryland, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and now Randolph, New Jersey. Every Greek community took us in like family, and it really was a joy for my children. They kept the family together. And that's where the Greek Orthodox Church is so important to us. And I'm humbled by this honor. I'm honored by this honor, and I will always be a proud Greek, and I will always do my part in keeping the high standards of the Greeks going forward. And I thank you all for everything you've done for me.
Thank you, Director. It speaks volume about your character that you used the word humbled 3 times during this interview. And I pray to God that He keeps you humble, keeps you safe, keeps you vigilant, keeps you wise and alert, so that you in turn and all your colleagues can keep us safe and continue to bring to fruition the goal and the mission, essentially, of the FBI. May you have the shelter of God and of the archangels keep you safe. And God bless you, and thank you for the invaluable work, both the work that we see and the work that we do not see as civilians here in New York City. Αγαπητοί μου εν Χριστώ αδελφοί, μόλις ακούσαμε την συνέντευξη με τον διευθυντή του γραφείου του FBI εδώ στη Νέα Υόρκη, τον Γιώργιο Βενιζέλο. Εμείς θα απολαύσουμε τώρα ένα μουσικό διάλειμμα και επιστρέφουμε ευθύς αμέσως. Ευχαριστώ πολύ.